I wasn't supposed to be there that late. The hallway was already quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice your own breathing. I'd just finished fixing a loose cabinet hinge in her kitchen, a favor I told myself was just for her son's sake. But he wasn't home. Only she was. She leaned against the counter, one hand cupped around a mug of coffee she'd forgotten to drink. The steam had long faded. "I didn't think you'd actually show up," she said, her tone somewhere between teasing and surprised. I shrugged. "You said the door wouldn't close right. Figured I'd check before it got worse." It sounded practical enough. But my eyes kept drifting to the way a strand of hair had fallen out of place, brushing against her cheek. She didn't move it away. The kitchen light hummed softly above us, catching in the faint lines at the corners of her eyes, lines that didn't dull her at all, only made her look like someone who had lived, someone who had felt. "You're good at listening," she said suddenly, as if the words had been waiting too long to stay in. "Most people just talk over me." I almost told her that she could talk for hours and I wouldn't mind. Instead, I took the safer road. "Only to you?" She froze for just a second, not visibly, but enough that I noticed the way her fingers tightened slightly around the mug. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged, like the air before a storm. I started packing my tools back into the box, but my hands moved slower than they should have. I didn't want the moment to end. "Your generation," she said softly, almost like she was speaking to herself, "doesn't usually stay." I looked at her then, really looked. She wasn't wearing any makeup. Her sweater had a loose thread at the hem. There was nothing polished or staged about her. And still, I couldn't remember the last time someone held my attention like that. "Maybe I'm not like most people my age," I said. She gave a faint, disbelieving smile, the kind you give when you want to hide that you're pleased. The rain outside had started without us noticing. The sound of it filled the room, pattering against the windows. She stepped closer, glancing toward the glass. "Guess you'll have to wait it out," she murmured. I nodded, setting the toolbox aside. The space between us was smaller now. The scent of her coffee, and something softer, warmer, that had nothing to do with coffee, drifted in. "You ever notice," she said quietly, "how sometimes you meet someone and it's like you already know where the conversation's going to go, even before it starts?" I swallowed. "Yeah." She looked at me then, eyes holding mine longer than they should have. "And does that scare you?" My answer stuck in my throat. Because it did. It scared me in a way that felt almost addictive. The rain picked up, hitting the roof harder. She reached past me to grab the sponge on the counter, her hand brushing my arm, just lightly, but enough that my skin reacted before I could think. Neither of us moved away. Her voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "You didn't have to come tonight." I should have told her I knew that. I should have told her I was just being polite. But I didn't. And in that breath of hesitation, with her eyes still fixed on mine, I realized the distance between us wasn't going to stay untouched for long. It should have been nothing, a late-night favor, a bit of small talk over the hum of kitchen lights. But there was something about the way she was standing, mug still in her hand, rain muting the rest of the world, that made it feel off-limits. Dangerous. She wasn't just some woman I was helping out. She was my friend's mom's best friend, the kind of person you grow up knowing by polite greetings and quick hellos at barbecues. The kind of person who belongs to a category you don't cross. But now, in her quiet kitchen, that label felt paper-thin. She turned, placing the mug in the sink. "It's been a weird month," she said suddenly. "Not that you asked?" I almost laughed, but stopped when I saw her expression. There was no playfulness in it. What happened? She hesitated, then gave a small shrug. Ended something I thought was going somewhere. Turns out, it wasn't. The way she said it wasn't bitter. It was tired. Like the kind of tired you feel in your bones. My mind should have gone to safe places, telling her she deserved better, offering some generic comfort. Instead, I was stuck on how the light caught in the curve of her jaw, and how her voice softened when she admitted it. She kept her back to me, rinsing out the mug. I think that's why I like talking to you. You don't rush to fill the quiet. You just let it be there. I leaned against the counter, feeling my heart beat a little too much. Maybe I like what happens in the quiet. She glanced over her shoulder, eyes meeting mine, and it was the kind of look you either break away from immediately or hold until you're past the point of no return. I noticed little things then, the faint indentation on her ring finger, like a mark that hadn't faded yet. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear twice, even though it didn't need fixing. And the guilt slid in under my skin. This was someone who had lived more years than me, who had history I couldn't fully understand. But the part of me that should have stepped back didn't. The rain outside kept hammering the roof, filling the room with a soft, relentless rhythm. She set the mug aside and leaned on the counter next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth coming off her sweater. You're not in a hurry, are you? I shook my head. Good. Her voice dropped, almost playful, almost not. She reached out, her fingertips brushing my forearm like she was testing if she could get away with it. My breath caught, not because it was bold, but because it was careful. Intentional. I almost said something then, something that would have shifted the air between us for good. But the words sat heavy on my tongue, waiting. And she was still looking at me like she already knew what they were. Her hand lingered just long enough on my arm for my mind to start filling in every possibility. I told myself to step back, put space between us, but my body stayed rooted, traitorous. You ever regret not saying something? She asked suddenly. Her tone was light, but her eyes weren't. Sometimes, I said. My voice came out rougher than I expected. Why? She gave the faintest shrug, like she was throwing away her own question. But she didn't move her hand. The warmth of her touch was pulling me under, and I was seconds away from telling her the truth, that I'd thought about her more times than I could admit, when her phone lit up on the counter. The ringtone shattered the moment. She reached for it, glancing at the screen. A man's name I didn't know. She silenced it without answering. Don't you need to know? She said quickly. Too quickly. I nodded, pretending to accept that, but the question settled deep in me. Whoever it was, he'd just been shut out in favor of me. She shifted, maybe to change the subject. You didn't answer my question. What question? The regret one. Yeah, I admitted. I regret not saying a lot of things. There was a pause. We both knew we weren't talking about just any things. She leaned back against the counter, the distance between us now only a couple of feet. Like what? I opened my mouth and stopped. This was where I should have pulled away, told her the rain was letting up, grabbed my tools and left. Instead, I found myself noticing the way her sweater slipped slightly off one shoulder, how the faint scent of her shampoo cut through the smell of rain. The front door rattled. A sudden knock. She froze. We exchanged a glance, an unspoken question passing between us. Whoever it was knocked again, harder this time. Her voice was low. Stay here. I didn't move as she stepped out of the kitchen. I could hear muffled voices, the door opening, then closing. When she came back, she didn't explain. She just walked straight toward me, her expression unreadable. Everything okay? I asked. She stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the tiny flecks of gold in her eyes. Depends, she said softly. On what? Her hand reached past me for the sponge on the counter. Or maybe that was just an excuse. Her fingers brushed my side, slow enough to make me doubt it was accidental. And there it was again, that tight, suspended moment where you don't know if the next second will break the tension or snap it completely. Her fingers lingered on my side, and for a second, I forgot how to breathe. This wasn't an accident anymore. I turned slightly toward her, close enough to catch the faint rise and fall of her breathing. You don't usually let people in this close, I said quietly. She didn't look away. And you don't usually stay this late. The rain had softened outside, but inside, the air was heavier than it had been all night. My chest felt tight, not with nerves, but with the pull of everything unsaid. You're making this. I started, then stopped. Making it what? I hesitated. Hard to pretend I'm here for just a loose hinge. That earned me the smallest of smiles, but it faded quickly. You think I don't notice? Her voice had changed, no longer casual, no longer hiding. It was low, direct, the kind that leaves no room to pretend you misunderstood. I should have said something safe. I should have stepped back. Instead, I let the truth slip out. I think you notice everything. She didn't answer, just studied me in a way that felt like she was peeling something back, layer by layer. The silence between us was so taut it felt like even the hum of the fridge was holding its breath. Say it, she said finally. Say what? What you're not saying. I shook my head. If I say it, we can't take it back. Maybe I don't want to. My heartbeat was loud in my ears now. I didn't know if she meant the words the way I wanted her to, or if I was just hearing them that way. Then you have to be sure, I said, barely above a whisper. Because once we cross that line. She stepped in, closing the last inch between us. The faint warmth of her body pressed into the space where mine was already leaning forward. Do I look unsure? I didn't answer. Couldn't. Every instinct was telling me to close that gap, but there was still just enough hesitation left to hold me in place. Her hand came up, brushing the side of my neck, her thumb grazing my jaw like she was testing how far I'd let her go. I'm not supposed to feel this, she said, her voice shaking in a way I hadn't heard before. The words hit me harder than I expected, because they were mine too. We stood there, the inches between our mouths electric, either of us moving, yet. And then she asked, barely audible, Do you want me to stop? The room went quiet in a way that made it clear my answer would change everything. She didn't move her hand from my jaw. My answer sat heavy between us, unspoken, when she drew in a slow breath and said, You remind me of someone. It wasn't the line I expected. Who? She hesitated, like she was deciding whether to open a door she'd kept locked for years. Someone I knew when I was your age. I almost made a joke to ease the tension, but the way her eyes softened stopped me. This wasn't nostalgia. This was something else. He was quiet, she said, her thumbs still brushing my skin. Listened more than he spoke. Had this way of looking at me like I was the only thing in the room. Her voice caught, just slightly. What happened to him? I asked. She stepped back then, just far enough that the air felt colder. I married someone else. I swallowed. You regret that? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I thought the moment was going to dissolve into silence, but then her phone lit up again on the counter. Same name as before. This time, she didn't silence it. She let it ring until it stopped, her jaw tightening. You can answer, I said, even though part of me didn't want her to. It's not. It's complicated. She turned away, leaning on the counter. He's the reason I ended it last month. And now he keeps calling, like he didn't burn it all down. I didn't know whether to feel relief or guilt. Relief because it wasn't a husband. Guilt because her pain had nothing to do with me, and yet I wanted to be the one standing in that gap now. Before I could speak, the front door rattled again, no knock this time, just the sound of it opening. A man's voice echoed from the hallway. You left your car in the driveway. Thought you might want. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me standing there. His eyes flicked to her, then back to me. Didn't know you had company, he said, and there was nothing casual about it. She stepped forward quickly. You shouldn't be here. He ignored her. So, is this the replacement? The words were sharper than they needed to be, and I felt the weight of them land in the air. That's enough, she said, her voice shaking now, but with anger this time. Leave. He looked at me like he was memorizing my face for later, then walked out, the door slamming behind him. The silence after was worse than the noise. I searched her face, trying to read what she was feeling, whether she was about to tell me to go too. Instead, she said, Now you know. And the way she said it made me realize whatever just happened, it had changed everything. The door had barely stopped rattling when I turned back to her. She was still staring at it like she could burn the whole encounter out of existence if she tried hard enough. You okay? I asked. She let out a breath that wasn't quite a sigh. I don't know what okay is anymore. Her sweater hung looser now, like she'd shrunk into herself. I wanted to step forward, to close the gap again, but I wasn't sure if I was allowed anymore. Who was he? Her eyes flicked to mine. The mistake I kept making. And part of me still wants to answer when he calls. I didn't expect her to admit that. It hit me somewhere deep, not because it was about him, but because it was honest, painfully so. You don't have to explain, I said. Maybe I do, she countered. Because you're standing here looking at me like I'm some better version of myself. And I'm not. I stepped closer, the edge of the counter pressing against my hip. I'm not here for a version of you. I'm here for you. She shook her head slightly, a small, disbelieving laugh breaking through. You don't know what that means yet. Then tell me, I said. Her gaze lingered on mine, and I could see the war happening behind her eyes, the pull forward, the push back. It means if you stay, you'll see the mess. You'll see me answering calls I shouldn't. You'll see me holding on to things I should have let go of years ago. I took another step. And you'll see me not leaving. That stopped her. Not the words, but the steadiness in them. Her hand came up slowly, almost hesitant, before resting against my chest. I covered it with mine. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Probably, I said. We stood there in the hum of the kitchen, the rain still faint outside, her pulse steady against my palm. I thought she might pull away, end it cleanly before we both drowned in it. Instead, she leaned in just enough that her forehead rested against mine. You're going to make me believe you, she murmured. I didn't answer because I knew I would. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, of every word we hadn't said, every look we'd held too long, every moment we both stopped pretending. When she finally pulled back, her hand slid down my arm and didn't let go. Stay, she said simply. And for the first time all night, there was no hesitation in either of us. The rain had slowed to a faint drizzle by the time we moved from the kitchen to the living room. She sat on the couch, legs folded under her, while I settled into the armchair across from her, too far to touch, too close to be strangers. The air felt different now. Not lighter exactly, but clearer. I don't know what this is going to look like tomorrow, she said, eyes on the window. Neither do I admitted. But I know I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. She smiled faintly at that, not the kind of smile that says everything's fine, but the kind that says she's willing to try. For a long moment, we didn't speak. The quiet wasn't charged anymore. It was something gentler. Still fragile, but not ready to break. What about him? I asked carefully. Her gaze drifted down to her hands. He's the past. I've spent years letting him walk in and out whenever he wanted. Tonight, I think I finally locked the door. I didn't say anything, but I felt something shift in me, relief, maybe, or the knowledge that I'd been there to see her close that chapter. You're not afraid? She asked suddenly. I'm terrified, I said honestly. But I'm more afraid of walking away and wondering what we could have been. She looked at me then, and for the first time tonight, there was no hesitation in her eyes. Just an openness that hadn't been there before. You're too young to be this sure, she said softly. Or maybe you've just been waiting for someone who is, I countered. Her laugh was quiet but real, and it felt like the first true exhale in hours. She shifted over on the couch, patting the space beside her. I crossed the room and sat down, close enough that our shoulders touched. No rush, no urgency, just a solid, unspoken agreement that neither of us was leaving tonight. For the rest of the evening, we talked about nothing and everything: old music she loved, the places I wanted to see, the small, ordinary things that somehow felt like promises when spoken in that dimly lit room. When I finally stood to leave, she walked me to the door. The drizzle had stopped, leaving the air cool and still. Be careful getting home, she said. I will. I hesitated, then added, this doesn't feel like the end. It's not, she said, and the certainty in her voice was all I needed. I stepped out into the quiet street, the night holding that rare feeling, the sense that something real had just begun. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?